Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Happy Building. This time I have the absolute honor of having Raphael, CEO and founder of WeWeb, on the podcast, calling in from Paris. How are you doing?
Hey, Mike. Really good to be here. I'm good. How are you?
It's a pleasure to have you. And what I would like to start with is if you give us a very quick intro about your own personal background before we dive deeper into WeWeb and what it does. Like I always like to understand like the story and how you actually got to WeWeb. So tell us a little bit more about your like professional experiences
Sure.
before you actually started WeWeb.
Yeah. So I did, as a university, I did an MBA basically. So I have more like a business background and I majored in finance. And so I started my career by doing some, finance for commercial real estate, basically financial consulting and optimizing commercial real estate portfolios for a company called JLL. It's a great company, very famous in the US. I really enjoyed my time here. But when I was an intern back in my university, I actually worked for an entrepreneur, and he started a brick and mortar business. But it's an outstanding success. He basically built corners inside supermarkets where you can buy fresh sushis, and so you can see like the master sushi chefs actually cutting the salmon in front of you, making the products in front of you. Everything is, beautiful, very designed, very lean. And so you buy the products and they're actually very good. They are very good because they were made, and I had so much luck back then. They were made by the chef of the Japanese embassy in Paris. And the guy was actually coming to the apartment where we were working just to try out the recipe. And he was like, "Hey Raf, do you like them? Like, is it good?" And everything was so great because like this guy was an absolute amazing chef. So he
Yeah.
created those recipes. And then so my former boss basically launched his business, and he grew from one corner to hundreds and hundreds in a couple of years. So it's an amazing scale story. He didn't raise one penny. Everything was self-funded through loans or his own personal money, but he didn't invest so much from his personal money. And now he still owns 100% of the company, and he's a tremendous success. And now it's all over Europe. So it's been an amazing experience. So I worked for him for a year and a half because I did basically all of my internships for him, and then he wanted to hire me, and I wanted to try my way through the corporate world just to see how it feels. I had fun, but after 2 years, I was like, okay, I want my own entrepreneurial story. And so I met my two co-founders. They were friends of friends, and my two co-founders are actually very technical. Both of them are developers, basically. And so we started out by doing a website builder that was first dedicated for mobile. And so we had a lot of friends who were owning like bars and restaurants all across Paris. And those guys didn't have any computers. They wanted to be able to update their data directly on their phones. So we built that for them. And WeWeb really started like this in 2018. And I'll just stop there because that's it for my background, and then a lot of things happened until WeWeb became the WeWeb that is today.
That was a very good intro. So basically, from optimizing real estate portfolios to growing sushi brick and mortar corner stores.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about. I've seen a couple of them in like supermarkets in
Cool.
Europe. And
Yep.
I'm not super big into sushi, but one of my co-founders, like if he could, he would eat sushi every single day. So
Okay.
I'll
He
definitely
would
tell
enjoy
him
being
that.
around one of those corners. They are very,
Yes,
very good.
I'll tell him that he should let you know if he
Yeah.
ever needs some good sushi advice.
Absolutely.
So like from that, and then you said you wanted to build something on your own. You had like this like kind of like drive to do that, and you met your co-founders, and you said they were friends of friends. So
Friends
maybe
of
tell
friends.
us how did you actually like decide to build something together, because that's always
Yeah.
interesting, especially for people who want to found something but who are not quite sure who to do it with.
Yeah.
So like how did that actually happen?
So that was great. I spoke to one of my friends from the business school, and I was like, I want to do something, in the entrepreneurial world, and I have something for tech. I like tech, but I'm not technical myself. But I was always curious. I was always on the look and on Twitter, looking around what was happening, the different trends and stuff. But I was not coding myself, which was good, to start a no-code platform. I think it made a lot of sense because I was really non-technical, so I could have this hat of the non-technical guy who actually wants to build something very technical, and so that helped. And I spoke to my friend, and my friend told me, well, one of my best friends from youth is actually a developer. Let me just introduce you to each other. And so we had a nice drink in Paris. I pitched him that, there's those guys who own restaurants and bars, and we should just talk to them just to understand their needs, because I'm sure they have some needs from a technical perspective. And don't ask why, but because we were always in the bars, at the university. And so that's how we became friends with those guys. You know what I mean? These were the only guys who we knew who owned the business back in the day. So, they were the first target, basically.
Yeah.
It's funny. And this guy who became my co-founder told me, I have a friend from university. He's a beast in code. He codes like as fast as he can think. So we should get him in the team. And so his name is Mark. And we met Mark probably a week later, same bar, having a drink. And
I see a pattern.
Yeah, there's always a bar somewhere in our history. I don't know why. And then the three of us said, okay, let's start something. And I based my way of doing on the experience I had with the sushi guy. And I remember he started his own company by still working for his former job until he got his first contract. And we did the same. So we basically were working, and nights and weekends, we created our first product. And then we had like one client, and out of this client, we said, okay, let's do this. Let's just quit. Yeah, like fortune is here. Let's quit and let's start our company. And so we went full time on January 2018, the three of us, and started the company at that moment.
Interesting. Okay, so basically what you did is did it as a side gig, and then you needed this specific sign, and because you saw your former boss do it very successfully after he had his first like contract or client, you said, okay, this is the sign. We've worked really hard. Now we have like some kind of external proof that this is actually working.
That someone actually wants this. And let's work on it. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so you're three people, you're going full time. It's January 2018. Maybe lead us to the next couple of steps. Like what happened afterwards?
Sure. Well, then from January 2018 to December 2019, 2 years, it's a struggle. It's like 2 years of struggle. The three of us, we hire a couple of interns. One of the interns is still with us. His name is Damien. He's actually the cousin of Mark. And he's the same kind of beast. Like both of them, I don't know what happens in the family, but they are two
good DNA.
Yeah, exactly. Two coding beasts. And he's still with us today. And so, we kind of start to work together, and revenue goes up and down. It goes up and down, it goes up and down. There's a lot of churn. It's a very hard sell. We don't have much traction. It's very hard. But on the way, and I think that's what was interesting, we figured that there were some technical gaps in the no-code world. One being there is this whole wave of API things and decoupling everything, the back and the front. And most new websites and web applications were being built in a decoupled fashion, in an API first fashion. Remember, we're in 2018. And there's those new JavaScript frameworks that are becoming popular. Back in the days, it's Angular, and then Vue popping up, and then React is popping up. And we are like, okay, so there is maybe a path in this whole no-code landscape to build a new front-end builder that will be decoupled so that you can connect to any backend, and that will be based on JavaScript frameworks so that every single element is actually a scoped component, which will make the whole thing much more modular than what was existing back in the days. And so in 2019, we wrote a white paper, actually, a strategic paper. I think it was, 20 pages about those trends that I'm describing right now. And we said, okay, there is definitely a place for a new no-code platform here. we should build it. And I went out to see some VCs. And so I started the round, I think probably in June 2019, and I closed it in December. It took me 6 months. It was very, very long because we didn't have much traction. We didn't have much proof that we were very good entrepreneurs. Like we had everything to prove basically. And so we closed the first round in 2019. And so say January 2020, we have the cash on the bank.
Good.
And now we can start to execute more because building a front-end builder was very ambitious. We were upfront with our VCs and told them it's going to take time because it's hard to ship an MVP website builder. It has to be, people have expectations with regards to.
I know the struggle. The struggle.
Right?
Just on the other side.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think let's stop here for 1 second and then we can continue the journey, because this is something that I find very interesting and specific in the kind of space that we are in. Because you always hear about, okay, ship your MVP quickly. Yeah. You need to get it out to your users as quickly as possible and as fast as possible. However, I would argue that, let's call it in dev tooling overall, but then also specifically in the no-code, low-code space, where you want to give your users the ability to produce something else, right? It's not that you are a logistics provider for them or a SaaS app that syncs their bookkeeping or something, which is also it can be difficult to build. But the idea is that they use your product to build another product or to build something that actually software that's actually for other people again. And I think this is one step removed, and therefore the expectations are higher on the one hand. But then also on the other hand, it's just a little more complex to build, because to actually work, you cannot only have one feature. You need to have a couple of features together. And I just do that. You obviously know all of that. I just do that preamble for the listeners. So maybe lead us through why it isn't as easy as it might seem to ship a no-code, low-code front-end builder in 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to think first about what's going to be the output. You have your machine, your software, and then there's going to be an output. And this output, like you said, people will be will have very high expectations out of this output, because they'll basically create their website on all their web application with it. So it needs to work, right? And when you deploy it, it needs to be performant, it needs to be scalable, it needs not to have any security issues, that type of things. And so then you're thinking that suddenly you need to create a software that actually is writing code. And the code has to be very clean. Sorry, there's my baby crying in the background.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, he's very cute. Maybe he will show up on the video later. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
So, all right. And so that's why it takes a lot of time to actually craft, because, whenever you add a new feature, you have to think that the output will be, clean code, and it has to work very well. And then you have to think about all of the UX, because it's actually a new way of programming. If you think about it, it's like you're visually programming something, and it has to cover a lot of different use cases, because as you properly said, you actually give a platform for someone to actually build different things. And then when you're a front-end builder, and if you set out to be a front-end builder, you have to be agnostic to the type of things that are going to be built with your platform. And you could pick one. That's what we did at the beginning. We picked websites and not web applications. And I'm actually thankful we started with this, because it's probably slightly simpler than building web applications. But still, building websites is just imagine Webflow, just imagine WordPress. Those are very complex, very comprehensive platforms.
Yeah.
And when people will look at your platform, they will directly compare it to the others, to Webflow and WordPress. So you have to catch up with the level of features that they have. And so that's why it takes a lot of time.
Got it. So it's basically 3 different things, if I understand correctly. Number one, it's just a lot to build, right? There's just lots of things that you need to get done. Secondly, the expectations are a bit higher, because you are producing a software-based end product, which is a bit different than did the order ship or did the order not ship in e-commerce, right? Because the UI can be bad in e-commerce, but as long as the order arrives on time, that's fine. But like if you work in this tool on a daily basis to build your websites, to like build your own business, then you need like a little bit like higher bar of quality.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing you said is also very true. There are just these behemoths in your space. Like WordPress has been around forever. I don't know the percentages, but like a very high percentage of like actual websites on the web are powered by WordPress. And then
it's I think it's 60% of all website built with a CMS.
yeah, and
So it's like
that's a pretty high
gigantic.
market share, right? That's
Yes.
quite a bit.
It's amazing.
And then you have
Yeah, of course.
Webflow. Webflow is also like this company that has been like going on forever, has a big community, and then you're building this like website builder, and you're constantly being compared. I assume one of the first questions that people always ask is how are you different than WordPress, or how are you different
Absolutely.
than Webflow?
Yeah.
So okay, so you're basically at the stage, you're shipping, you have some money, but there is a gap, right? Because back then you were building websites, and now you're building secure, scalable, production-grade web applications. That's the goal of WeWeb right now, right? So
exactly.
Maybe lead us through the transition.
Yeah.
Like, what was the key moment here?
Yeah, so actually you gave a hint here. People were always comparing us to WordPress and Webflow and all the others. And the value we were providing compared to those was not high enough, I would say, to really make the company take off and really make people understand what was our position in the market. Because they were like, okay, so you're decoupled, that's fine. I know some people using headless systems like, Prismic, Contentful, Strapi, and Ghost and all of the others. And so we were like, okay, if you use one of those headless CMSs, you should probably consider using WeWeb on top rather than building with React or Vue, because you will enjoy a Webflow-like experience, but you will still be able to continue to use your headless systems. But headless systems started to understand that front-end is critical, and they added some capabilities for marketing teams to basically move around React components that were pre-built. And they were slightly getting into the front end. And so they were slightly eating the value that we were creating. And at the end of the value that was remaining was very low compared to the struggle it was to actually buy WeWeb and train your team on WeWeb rather than, WordPress, React, your headless system. And so it was a lot of friction for the sale, and the value, that we provided was not high enough. And so we are at the end of 2019 right now. And so we applied to YC at that moment, to Y Combinator. And we apply on that same philosophy, right? That there might be a space for a company here that's going to be a decoupled front-end builder because of all those API first systems. We just didn't crack it yet, but there must be something. And so that's what we told the partners during the interview. So they called us for the interview. That's what we told them. We showed we had the opportunity to do a little demo. We showed what we did. And I think they were excited. And so they brought us in. And going back to the beginning of our conversation about, shipping early, I think what we did not do properly at the beginning is that we were shy to actually do product hunts, to launch on Hacker News, and to get some press, to get the media to talk about us. Because we were like, WeWeb is not ready, we don't have any traction. And so we will use those firepower when we have traction. And it was a big mistake. Because during YC, the partners told us the first day, all right, 2 weeks later, you guys are on Hacker News. And then 1 week later, you guys are on Product Hunt and stuff. You know what it is.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so we did it. And here's what happened, Mike. Before YC, we were having about 100 signups every month, which isn't very low, right?
Yeah.
And out of those 100 signups, I was carefully selecting the people that were right into our target. And so I was extremely biased, and I was only talking to people that I thought I was interested in. During YC, we made 1,000 signups per month. So it completely boomed. And suddenly we had data. And out of this data, you know what we learned? We learned that people were trying to bend WeWeb to actually build web applications and not websites. So people were having those decoupled backends, API first, and they said, I don't care building a website on top of it. What makes sense is to build a web app on top of it. I want to build my client dashboard, internal portals, all of those logic-based web applications. And so we reached out to them and we said, what's your alternative? And they said, we don't have any alternative. We just code everything. and it's a pain in the ass. And then we were like, okay, how much would you be willing to pay, to have such a product? And we landed 2 customers willing to pay $1,000 per month. And then I said, all right, I guess we need to pivot. Or it was not a real pivot. It was more like a change in use case.
Yeah.
Because people are still building websites with WeWeb, but not only anymore. They build now
Yes.
websites, web applications, and everything you can do with a front-end builder.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Got it.
that's the next big step where we.
Okay, so basically, what happened is, number one, you were less shy about launching, and then you just launched, and you noticed, hey, like we already have a product that is kind of working, and people are bending it, and people are using it in ways that we did not actually expect them to use it. But this is potentially the use case that is, number one, more profitable for us, and number two, also has like less established competition.
And more value, more obvious value for the customer. Exactly.
More obvious value. That makes sense. So you decided, okay, this sounds like a smart idea. Let's go more into web applications. So how was that transition period from a product perspective? Because a web application needs a couple of different things in a website.
Of course.
Right?
So much.
So how was the transition period? Or maybe like one step before that, before we talk about that, was it an easy decision internally? Were all of you immediately on the same page? Or was it these classic late night, oh my God, I have no idea, and then 2 parties or 3 parties discussing different opinions? What was it like?
It was a great defining moment for the company, I think. It happened over the course of 1 week. And so it's the end of YC. We're in March. Yes. We did YC from January to March 2020. 2021, sorry. So we do YC. It's March. We need to pitch demo day and stuff, and then probably raise another round. And we're like, okay, we know that we don't have any traction, and it's a very hard sell only for websites. And we have 2 options. Either we felt that we had tractions for 2 different things. Either we do a marketing website builder, but for SEO purposes at scale. So building like thousands and thousands of web pages at scale that are highly, highly performant in a no-code fashion, or we build a web application builder. And then I went, we are 3 co-founders. The 3 of us, Mark, Florian, and I, went to see the whole team, and we're like, what are you guys excited in? And when talking about the marketing websites, all of them were like, I don't want to talk about that. I'm not excited. They were like, from a feature perspective, development perspective, I don't think they were super enthusiastic. And even my CTO was like, if we have to do it, I'll do it. But you know what I mean? It was so funny.
That's such a CTO vibe. It's like, well, like maybe people are paying us a lot for it, but it doesn't sound interesting to build.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then and for the web application builder, ideas were flourishing from everywhere. It was like everyone was so excited. Everyone had so many ideas. And then we were like, okay, so we need a team of passionate people. So let's pick that direction. And it was the right direction. First of all, it was much more exciting for us. And then secondly, it led us to where we are now, where we have traction and we have more clients, we deliver value. And then from a product perspective, what did it mean? So we took those 2 customers I told you about that were ready to pay $1,000 per month. And we brought them from basically the month of May to the month of November, I would say. And we built that transition with them, for their specific use case, which was much better than doing it on our own, basically.
Yes.
And in the meantime, we tried to have like more input from different people, but like those were the 2 main focus clients. And we did launch again in December of that same year. And since then, we had traction. Basically, we did a second launch on Product Hunt and Hacker News. And since then, we found traction.
Great. So it was only a very short, like 4-year journey that that basically happened overnight.
Yeah.
Okay. Voilà. But that was very helpful to understand. And I think it's very helpful for 2 different reasons. Like number one, it shows like a lot of persistence and resilience in your team. I think that you had this vision and you kind of knew which direction you wanted to go into broadly.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the like decoupled front end builder that is basically JavaScript components.
Yeah.
And you just didn't find the right application for it.
You got
it.
Yeah.
Usually the common startup advice is start with a problem and not necessarily start with like part of the solution. And in your case, you had like some of the solution figured out and you knew that it was out there, but you just didn't fully know like where to apply it. And then it took you a little bit, and it took you like some different attempts, and then at some point you ended up. So I think that's just like pretty cool to hear for everyone who wants to build their own company, or who even is interested in WeWeb, right? Because like if I'm thinking now about, okay, do I want to use WeWeb for like future projects? And then I have the choice between like, I don't know, like different teams potentially. And one team has been heads down grinding on this specific thing for like such a long time. And now things are actually looking better. The likelihood that they are continuing that way, if things are actually going well, are much higher if they already had these challenges in the past.
That's true. And the expertise we got along the way as well, because we spoke to so many customers. Yes. And it's actually very funny because now, like I told you, more people are still building websites with WeWeb.
Yes.
And now more and more people are actually asking, hey, are you guys like about to focus on SEO at one point? And and we are going to make it. And the funny part is that we already have the knowledge because we've been there.
Yes.
And so now it's just a question of allocating the resources and the time to do this. But that's something we will do, because the ultimate vision is to have like that front-end builder agnostic to the type of projects you're building, as long as you want to have a decoupled architecture and a JavaScript-based output, basically.
Nice. Yeah. And I think if I remember correctly, it was Quentin from your team who also mentioned that mobile projects are coming to WeWeb at some point next year as well. Which is then going full circle back to the very first WeWeb year when you were building.
Thank you so much. I never thought about it. What? It's so true. Yeah, it's actually so true. It's so funny.
So you're actually going back to your roots as well, which is good to hear.
Yeah.
Full circle. Okay, so we basically have established where WeWeb is right now. So if I use my own words, it's production grade, scalable, secure web applications that have JavaScript as like its fundamental layer. That's what you're doing. Yeah. That's what you're doing right now.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. It's the way I put it. Usually, it's a no-code front-end builder for decoupled architecture, and the JavaScript part of it is sometimes not even a choice. Sometimes, like many users actually don't really look at that. They just trust us on the performance of the output.
Yes.
But not all of them. For some of them, it's very critical to understand that behind the curtains, everything is written in Vue.js, and that it's an open source JavaScript framework that everyone knows. Yeah. And so
we actually use Vue.js as well at FastGen for most of our
really?
things.
Do you? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Nice.
So we've established where you are right now. I want to look a little into the future, but let's do that a bit later. Yeah. And now that we've actually arrived at like the present day, more or less, let's talk a little bit about WeWeb itself. And let's start with the question, now that we've established what it is, who should use WeWeb? Like, who is the prime target, or who are people that should say, okay, WeWeb is something that I should consider for my projects?
Yeah. So you can think about it in two different ways. Then there's the type of companies, and you can think about the size, the industry, and then there's the type of people.
Yes.
With regards to the type of companies, we cover every sizes and every industry. So we are very agnostic to actually the type of companies. We have, the one-man agency using WeWeb, the one-man startup using WeWeb, and then we have PwC as a client. We have BNP, Carrefour, Crédit Agricole, La Poste. We have like very large enterprise customers as well, using Cisco as well as one of our customers using our platform, which is great. And the interesting part is like all of them, and then it brings me to the second thing, came the same way. Those guys who actually subscribed to WeWeb and started to use it are builders. And then there's the type of builder. And in the no-code world, you have a different level of skills required to build with no-code platforms. And then you can start from really no skills at all. It's going to be easy, drag and drop. And if you are a friend with PowerPoint and Excel, you will find your way. And I would put in that category maybe, Stacker software for the web app builders.
Yep.
And I think those platforms are great for people who don't have much skills, but they want to build something that's going to be, to build something fast and that's going to be functional. And then you have a level above this one in terms of skills required, where you will have people using Bubble, for example. And for those type of people, you need to be tech savvy. You need to understand what's the backend, what's the front end, what's an API call, what's HTML and CSS. You don't what's JavaScript. You don't really need to actually know how to program and how to write that code, but you need to understand how this works. And so that's where WeWeb is positioned. So the type of users using WeWeb are usually tech savvy. They could be developers, they could be product people in product teams with a nice tech background or tech understanding, or we call them the citizen developers, people who actually got trained on what is tech and how everything in the tech works, but they just don't know how to code. Those people would usually be like the right users for WeWeb.
Got it. And I assume, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I assume that makes go-to-market sometimes a bit more difficult, because you have so many different people who could be a citizen developer. It could be an actual developer. It could be the head of marketing. Why not? It could be someone on the compliance team. It could be someone on the product team. So how do you think about reaching these people if you know the technical skill level they're at, but you don't necessarily know their role, or maybe you know some roles that are more likely to be a fit, but like, how do you think about reaching those kinds of people?
Yeah, that's interesting. We figured that the one common thing our users have is a curiosity to learn, and they behave like developers. So they will go online, they will look up on forums, they will look at videos on YouTube, and they will trust their peers to do a good job and in finding the right platform. And they will reach out to their peers just to have their feedback on their experience with our platform and stuff. And so at the end of the day, it's mostly word of mouth, just like React or Vue.js and these things. It's really like developer driven. It's really community driven growth, and that's how we organize WeWeb. So we try to provide content that people can share or to help them understand what's our platform, and then we just try to provide the best user experience possible and the best experience with our platform possible to our users, because we know that then they will tell their friends, then they will engage in forums and talk about it, and then suddenly people will be interested in WeWeb and they will go and sign up. That's also one thing very interesting that I said at the beginning. People subscribing to WeWeb are usually 95% of the time the builders. So they are those people who will land on our landing page and actually click the button sign up and end up in the editor and try things out. And it's very different than when you sell B2B SaaS, for the HR team. Sometimes it's just the CFO who's going to buy it, and he will look at the different set of features, but he will be more interested into the value and then the financial proposal. While the people buying WeWeb are actually the people using it, and I think it makes the whole different.
Definitely, yeah, it definitely makes it easier if you can market and sell to the same people, because you can tell the same story, right? You don't need to invent one story for the buyer and one story for the user. You can basically just repeat what it is that actually makes you great at what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good part to talk a little bit more about one thing that we kind of touched upon that I always find extremely interesting with these kinds of platforms, namely product roadmap and deciding what is part of the product roadmap or not. Because I'm assuming, and you already mentioned it, you're being pulled in so many different directions.
Of course.
Some people want SEO, some people want mobile. There's like 100 other things that you could add, because web applications are basically endless, right? You can build so many different things. So how do you make internal decisions of what you should build next?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is we always go back to the philosophy of that strategic paper we wrote in 2019 of being a decoupled front-end builder, because like that's, our instinct and gut feeling tells us that this is what the market wants. And it started as being the instinct and gut feeling, but now it's the market telling us. And so, very often people are asking us, are you guys, will you guys integrate a backend in WeWeb? And we're like, no, because it's a whole different product, and it means defocus, and it means not being aligned with our vision. And so, but we are going to build the best integrations with those guys. That's the feeling. So that's one. And thanks to this, we are making a lot of decisions. We're telling a lot of no's, basically, because
Yeah,
we always follow this
it's
one
important.
path. Yeah, we want to be like a decoupled front end builder for any type of projects. And then we are going one step at a time. So that's why mobile PWAs came late, and will come late to the party. It's going to be Q1 next year, but it's been already 2 years that we are building that web application builder. And so first we want to nail one type of products, of digital products that you can output, and then we'll expand to different others. SEO is also something we talk about since 3 years now. And so we are not bad at it, but we are not amazing at it. But that's something that's going to change when we decide to focus on it. So the next focus in terms of typology of product will be PWA. And then it's going to be probably SEO, but we still need to decide, and it's going to be decided only when we are sure that we are very good at web apps and very good at PWAs.
Got it. Okay, so you basically use the original framework and the founding document. I almost founding document of modern WeWeb, at least.
Nice, yeah, exactly.
Almost like your constitution, your internal constitution at WeWeb, and you go back to that. That's actually, I think that's great, because it just forces alignment internally, right? If you have this constitution document, and you can always just go back to it and say, this is what we decided. I mean, maybe at some point you might need to change a couple of things about it because the world changes and you might need to tweak it a bit. But having this underlying just foundational alignment between everyone in the company is, I assume, very helpful when it comes to making decisions, because you can just cross off some things that otherwise would be a longer conversation.
Yeah, it's our compass. It's the original direction that we decided to take, and we know it's going to take 10, 15 years, 20, I don't know. But that's the direction, and that's what we want to provide to the world, in the web world. That's the value that we want to build. And we think we are, it's just the beginning of the journey, but we are well on the way to actually provide a lot of value in this area.
Nice. And then you mentioned trust already at some point. And I think trust is so important for people that are trying out a new platform, and just being sure that what you can build is possible, being sure that it fulfills the purpose, that you get help if you need help.
Yeah.
And some of it is just delivering, but it's also about how do you convey that trust to people, right?
Yeah.
And WeWeb is very community focused, as you mentioned, but tell me a little more about what you're doing to convey that trust, that people can trust in WeWeb to the outside.
Yeah, I think it happens really on a daily basis in the little details of how we manage the company and the relationship to users. When the user has an issue, we try to reply. Of course, we could be better. It's all about allocating resources and having enough resources available for all the users. But it happens so many times that some users just reach out and he's like, I don't know what happened, but I lost my work. And for us, it's like, whoa, big alert! Everyone stops. We need this guy to find his work back. And many times we figured that it was not our fault, that the guy just lost his work, out of some misclick or anything. But then in the end, it's our fault, because it shouldn't have happened from a UX perspective. And then we are learning from this. So it's just one example. I have many others, but I don't know, just people asking for some help for some things that for us seems very trivial, but we're still going to help them, or direct them to the right resources. So yeah, I think it's trying to be available, and also trying to be accountable, and never letting the user down, especially when he's in trouble. Like my application, I cannot publish. I lost it. I have, my production is down. And
Mm.
so we try to be very, very reactive. So we have those priorities, back uh, behind the curtains, we have those priorities. And level one is production problem. The work has been lost, and someone cannot publish. This is level one. And level one means whatever you're doing, you just stop and you just, answer the customer and make sure that he's happy again. And it doesn't even mean to be a customer. It can be just a user, a non-paying user.
Yeah,
And so we'll try to provide the same level of assistance for that type of problems, whoever the customer is.
got it.
And then I think people talk, and then
Mm.
again, coming back to word of mouth, and people will be like, well, I can talk to the guys at WeWeb and they were kind enough to help me, although I know they are so busy with so many other things. So I trust them to continue helping me in that sort. So that's for the, I would say, user relationship. And then the other
Mm.
part is, like you said, shipping. Like people are asking for things. You try and commit. You say, okay, I'll try to deliver it to you, next quarter, and you make sure you actually do it, and you don't stop delivering.
Yeah, this is one of our favorite things. Just okay, you need this feature, we'll give it to you at that point, and then just try to ship it as fast as possible.
Yeah,
And even there, sometimes it's expectation management, because if they want like a very specific weird integration that no one else ever wants, and it's a very, very long time to actually build, then you
yeah,
need to, like, you can help them like find a workaround. But sometimes it's literally just, okay, this feature, it makes a lot of sense, we just ship it as fast as possible.
yeah,
Which is actually a
exactly.
great transition to the next question that I wanted to ask you, because product velocity is super important, right?
Yeah,
It is one of the key things that keeps the community engaged, that also just shows that you move forward. Because as we've alluded to earlier, there's like so many things that could be built and so many things that could make a platform better. So the short version of the question is, how do you make sure that WeWeb ships fast?
yeah. I think the first thing is um, the quality of the product itself and how it's architectured. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that doesn't have to do with anything that the user sees,
Mm.
but it's actually, if your product is a noodle plate, you're screwed. And I'm telling this because I lived it. Our product used to be a noodle plate and it was terrible and we were so slow and it was awful. And then we had someone who basically came and saved our life. Her name is Aurélie. She still works for us right now.
Mm.
She's an amazing developer,
Mm-hmm.
and she has that structure in mind, and she helped us, structure our product so that it would become more nimble and much more easy to actually update and change. And so, Aurélie, if you listen to us, thank you. And yeah, she did a fantastic job to pro, you know provide this culture, because eventually it's a culture
Mm-hmm.
within the tech team. And the tech team obviously adopted it with pleasure. And it took us about 6 months to kind of pivot the infrastructure, if I can say, to become much more agile and
Mm-hmm.
nimble. And, from a day to another, then the velocity, increased by tenfold. It was absolutely
Mm.
amazing.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, that would be my first. So first, ship your MVP and stuff. It can be dirty. You don't care. But once some of the parts, they will stay. Make sure they are not like a noodle plates, because otherwise you will pay it later. Especially because velocity is very important for the users, and we understand them. And if it's important for the users, then it's the most important thing for you as a startup. So I would say that's the first one. And then the second, and it's probably related, but again, I think it's a question of culture. And so sometimes don't spend too much time trying to figure out, write the best product ticket and have all the designs ready and stuff. Just build something, ship it, put it in the hands of the customer, get their feedback and make it better on the way, And it doesn't mean that behind the curtains, your code is disgusting. It means that you didn't spend too much time trying to design something that's actually not going to hit the target.
mm.
Make your best guess, build it, put it in the hands of the customers, and then iterate with them. And I think that's how you keep a nice speed.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And So it's architecture, and I think many people underestimate architecture. So when we started FastGen, the first month we worked on FastGen, like the whole team didn't write. I don't want to say a single line of code. There was probably like we wrote a couple lines of code, but the only thing that mattered back then was architecture, 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 architecture.
Interesting.
Just because we knew if we got this wrong, it would slow us down so much.
Very interesting.
So the very first thing that we did when we started, like back in the day, was just think about architecture.
Okay.
And then once we had that figured out, then we actually started to building.
Very nice.
To build. And I think that was like it felt really slow back then in the very early days, right? Because we're like, oh my god, like we have like we want to get like the beta, like the private beta live at that point, and
of course,
we haven't even started shipping. But it was such a good decision because it now makes us much faster, and I think we benefit from it a lot. And there's always things that you sometimes have to like adapt and amend, etc. But it definitely helped us. And it makes a lot of sense that you said, like, since you shifted the architecture, it makes you faster. And the second part I also find interesting because I want to be clear, because I think that is what you said. What you say is not ship a bad feature. What you say is ship a feature that actually solves the problem for the user, right? And then you can optimize around that afterwards. So the problem needs to be solved, and then everything else, just optimize it, iterate, and make sure that they can break through that barrier and that they can actually continue working with this. That makes a lot of sense to me as well, because you can spend a lot of time just on like some last pixels and then this animation here and that animation. And you can always do that in polishing afterwards. But usually the user cares more about, can I do this? Or does this work? At least on the very, very first level.
Absolutely.
So that makes sense to me as well.
And about the first part, like how did you anticipate this? Is this because you learned it the hard way before, or?
I mean, this is the second startup we're building. So basically, in the last company we were building a fintech. We raised like a lot of money because we are investing in students all over the country, like $100+ million. We like moved millions of dollars around every week, and we're building all these different products internally. And the issue that we ran into was, okay, we need to ship this faster and this faster and this faster. And then sometimes we were just blocked by things that we decided pretty early on. So we just knew this time we really needed to like focus on the structure first before we can start.
Great.
And we also talked to one or two of our like advisors back then, or just people we knew. Like the CTO of Plaid was someone we talked to a lot about. And also like some other like CTO of like pretty big companies that scaled with them. The issue is that you have then is we don't need like Plaid level scale right now, right?
Sure.
So we don't need like 10 million.
To...
So you need to like you need to find something in between where we don't need to change our architecture at any point soon. If we ever are, and I hope at some point we will be a $10 billion company, then we will have to change some things about the architecture.
Probably,
but we can worry about that in the future.
Exactly.
In the interest of time, I think I only have one or two questions left for you. That was already very extended. Let's talk a little bit about the future. I promised it earlier, and maybe you can give people a little bit of a sneak peek. You talked a little bit about what's coming, but I think there's like a couple more things that are also coming in terms of like web applications related. What are the things that you're most excited about in the next, like, let's say 6 months or something like that?
Yeah. The first thing I'm most excited about is on Wednesday, we'll have a very important release. And that very important release is what we call reusable components or components. And it's going to be, you will have components that are going to be instances with a parent-child logic. It seems trivial and obvious that we should have that since many, many months, right? But we didn't actually need it to arrive to the scale we are at right now. But now it's like, it's obvious that we should build it. Many of our users are asking for it, and we know that it's going to help them ship faster, which is in the end our mission. Our mission is to help users ship faster. We did many things to help them until now, and I think the next big thing was this one. And this one is going to open up the second big thing, which is the marketplace. And so we'll have many of our users actually building templates, UI kits, and plugins for our customers, just like Bubble has, for example, today, or Webflow or WordPress. And if you think about the community-driven growth, we think it makes a lot of sense to actually open that marketplace, but we needed the reusable components first,
Yes.
because we want it to be, as scalable and maintainable in time as possible. And so the marketplace will be happening at the beginning of Q1 next year. We already started to kind of draft it and talk about it with customers and users, but we are going to actually deliver it hopefully in January. The first version might be early February. We'll see. It's going to depend on, but it's going to be early Q1 basically. Then the next thing is going to be PWA. So mobile applications, and we're going to figure out a way, because it exists in the dev world, to actually wrap those PWAs to deploy them in one click on stores and make them like almost native mobile applications.
Nice.
Everybody is excited about this at WeWeb. All the users are excited about this.
I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
That
I'm
sounds
looking
pretty
forward
cool.
to see what people will build here. That's gonna be very nice. So that's gonna be for Q1 as well. And then when marketplace, PWAs, all of this is well underway, I know that in Q2 it's gonna be improve those two, right? Improve marketplace, improve PWA, keep improving the integrations we have with different backends. That type of things. So that's gonna be Q2, and in between, we are going to add a lot of AI in WeWeb. We already started, and it's actually so exciting what you can do with AI in platforms like ours. Because again, if the mission is help customers, help users just deliver digital products faster, then AI is going to definitely help. And I think the combination of AI and no code is a fantastic combination, because if you think about it, you can prompt the AI in WeWeb today to help you build a workflow. And once the workflow is built, maybe 70% of the time it's going to be good, but 30% of the time something will not be working. But you will have access to the visual builder just to understand what's not working. You won't have to go into the code, right, to actually fix it. And that's going to be amazing. Another great thing, if you think about using AI to build your interfaces, because that's gonna happen in WeWeb as well.
Yeah,
you will prompt something, and it will create a nice, beautiful interface for you. Most probably, maybe only 30% of the time will you be happy. But then, if you want to change the color of a button, you will be able to do it through the interface, and that's going to be much faster than prompting again the AI to just change the button color from blue to green. You know what I mean? And that's why we're thinking that combining AI with the power of no code is gonna help accelerate even more shipping digital products. So that's something also I'm very excited to work on, and we are going to hire AI specialists, probably one or two, and those people will just be 100% of their time dedicated on improving the WeWeb Copilot and the WeWeb AI integrated in WeWeb. We are going to train our own models, I think, most probably. And there might be a way to bridge the gap between Figma and all of the design platforms and a platform like ours, WeWeb, through AI as well. Like, using the vision, maybe you can get all of your Figma designs properly put into WeWeb, and then you can add the logic, and then you can go in production. And then you would again accelerate from design to production. So might seem that I'm going all over the place here, but I think there is a nice silver lining. And it's just step by step we'll get there, and that's going to take all of the 2024, and probably towards the end of 2024 we hopefully will have the time to focus on all of those SEO capabilities, and the biggest one will be basically SSR. So if you're familiar with it, so it's server-side rendering of the pages. Today it's not the case in WeWeb, but there might be a way that we can achieve this, and that you would be able to select a set of pages and server-side render them. And then for the SEO, you will have like top-notch performances, but that's going to be for the end of the year, I think.
Got it. So lots of exciting stuff coming.
Yeah.
Lots of different areas. Lots of stuff to ship as well.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. I like
Thanks.
that you think that far ahead. And yeah, I'm overall also excited about how many cool things people are already building with WeWeb and Fashion on our end. We
Yeah,
definitely
that's
see it
great.
coming up more and more often, that people are excited about WeWeb. But I think we're out of time. So it was great to have you on. We could go on for like multiple more hours. So maybe we
Absolutely.
just do
Yeah.
another one at some point next year once the new features are out, and then we'll do a recap. But thank you for calling in, and it was a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you
Everyone,
so much for having me.
WeWeb.io, if you want a web application, a no-code web application builder that makes you much faster. I heard a lot of things were about speed today, and that
True.
still gives you production-grade applications. Then you should check it out.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
being
much,
here.
Mike.